Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rogue Media. My name is Alex Schlerf, and today we're going to be going through my review of the new movie Materialists, an A24 movie written and directed by Celine Song, director of Past Lives, starring Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans. And I saw this movie last night. I'm posting this and recording this on Saturday. Saw it Friday night, and I'm going to be doing my review for it. And apologies in advance for people that are watching this. Was trying to shave before this episode and my razor broke. So nothing I can do about that, I guess. But anyway, watched Materialists last night. This is a movie that I've been pretty excited for from the beginning of the year because I love the cast. I love Pedro Pascal, obviously, because of the Fantastic Four connection there, and just in general. Dakota Johnson, I haven't seen a lot of her work, but I do enjoy her whenever she is in projects. And then obviously Chris Evans, just a great actor in general and a legendary Marvel actor as well. So I enjoy those three, and I watched Past Lives not too long ago. I don't think I watched it before, like around when it came out, but like around a year ago, I watched Past Lives, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. So obviously, Celine Song, this being her first film after Past Lives, I was excited for it, and just in general, the trailers look good, and it's A24, so that's always interesting. So yeah. I went into this with pretty high expectations because the reviews are pretty good as well, and I was not disappointed. I think I'll start with the positives because most of my thoughts on this movie will be positives because really my only complaint is like kind of a one like smaller thing and it kind of limits the ceiling of this movie in terms of rating wise. But yeah, I can go through a lot of the positive because there is a lot of them. I gave this movie a 4 star, and I can understand why people would give it like a rating lower, a rating higher, but same rating as Past Lives. I also give that a 4 star. I think the number one thing to start with, and the thing that I started my letterbox review with, is Celine Song's direction and writing is just completely on point once again. And she's just so talented, and I hope that she gets awards recognition again, like she did for Past Lives at the Oscars and Golden Globes there this year, once that awards contention starts coming into play. Because, you know, any complaints that I do have with this movie is not really related to her direction. By the way, that's only a small complaint because I still do really enjoy this movie. She's so talented, and with this movie, they're trying to make a narrative about kind of dating culture in 2025 and about love in 2025 and about how love and dating kind of how that should be interpreted within this story, but also just in general within the world. And just starting with her writing first, the way she writes the dialogue in some of these scenes between these actors is so impressive. And it's really sharp. And although the story is very slow paced and it's very just talking, talking, it's not action, action, action. She kind of leaves us in these scenes and really trusts the dialogue that she's writing and also trusts her actors, which I'll get into in the directing part of this kind of positive. But I really respect the fact that or that's more for the directing, but I her writing is just so crisp, and it's obviously expected after how good the writing was in Past Lives as well. But it brings together or brings to the forefront a very interesting take on love, in this story. But again, like I said, in general, because and again, I'm not going to spoil anything. This is a non-spoiler review. You don't have to worry about that. I'd absolutely go recommend you see this movie, but it's kind of challenging the narrative that everyone has their soulmate. Everyone will find love, and everyone has somebody that they'll be able to live for the rest of their lives, and it'll be perfect. And it's just waiting out there for somebody's just waiting out there for them. And it's not necessarily saying that's wrong, and it's not challenging love completely and saying love is just impossible. But with the dynamic of the three characters and a couple other side characters as well, it is challenging the narrative in general of that kind of theme. And I think that theme that it brings to the forefront and kind of what it does with love and kind of how it breaks it down and how Celine tells the story through our three main characters is so interesting and so well written. And I don't know how if there's certain people that this kind of narrative won't connect with, but I have a feeling that single or not single watching this movie, everybody will be able to relate to what these characters are going through, and because we've all gone through it at some point in our lives. Again, whether you're watching this when you're single or together or married for 50 years, whatever, you will have experienced this kind of story at some point in your life, and you'll have had these thoughts about love and if it's real and if it can be attained, and if the movie's called Materialist, so it's kind of about choosing between material value or just sentimental value and love, and that kind of section of it, or can those things be the same? And that's kind of challenged with the dynamic of Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans. And to go back to the original point, Celine just plays this out so well. And every time I kind of think I have a real big problem with this movie, I think back to some of the scenes that she wrote with these main three characters, or with two of the three characters, with one of the characters, with just Dakota Johnson, who's kind of the main character. I think back to those scenes and her writing and kind of the the theme that she's trying to portray here, and kind of breaking down such a huge overall encompassing theme about life, which is love. And what she does with that, I think, is so interesting. And even if certain parts of it might not work for some people and certain parts of it might not have worked for me, I think that what she's done with it is so impressive, and it's very creative and something that we don't always see in these love stories, because a lot of these rom-coms or romance drama movies these days are very very played out, and they kind of tell the same thing and whatever, and I'm gonna get into that kind of one of my negatives, but she does it and takes a very creative spin on it, and I think it's really interesting with the story. And not only is the story just interesting because of the story that she's telling, again, it challenges that narrative of love, and if everyone can find love. And I think it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it watching it, whether with their partner, without, with single, whatever. And that kind of works towards her direction as well, because she has this distinct style now, and she's not the only director that does this. I'm not saying she is, but you're watching a Celine Song movie because at least I've seen past lives in this. I haven't seen if she has any other films or TV shows I haven't seen, but in the two films of hers that I've seen, her distinct style is very long one shots or very long shots, placing you in the scene, and she is completely just putting the faith into her actors or actresses in the scenes. And there's multiple scenes in this movie where it's like 5 to 10 minutes of just I mean, unless it's tricky editing tricks, like I'll have to see if there's behind the scenes and stuff, but there were scenes where it was literally just like slowly zooming in on two actors just performing. And it's not only a credit to the main trio of actors, which is going to be my next positive, but it's credit to her for trusting her actors and making a movie that feels real. Like, when you make that choice of directing and doing it that way, and a lot of the scenes are very slow paced and kind of just dialogue focused, I respect that choice so much, because again, it feels real. It feels like you're literally watching a story with three people. It's real life events and real people talking. It's not exaggerated. It's not quick cuts. It's not going back and forth. It's not action packed. Like, and I'm not saying that's a problem. I love action movies and stuff like that, but like, I think it's so compelling seeing the way she directs her actors and the way she trusts those actors, and again, makes it feel like a real story. We are watching a real love story play out in real time, and it's such a credit to her talent. And I will watch any movie after Past Lives is kind of already the case, but I will watch any movie she directs from now on, because again, she tells real stories and tells stories that literally feel real, and it's putting faith in her actors and her talented actors. And she did the same thing in Past Lives with Greta Lee, who I think received awards recognition too, but I can't remember. And I actually I'll talk about this towards the end. I'm not sure if I like Past Lives or this better. I think Past Lives I might prefer a little bit more, but again, they're both similar in the way that, like, Materialist, what she does with it is, and there's a really just such a good scene towards the end, and I can't really say anything about it because it would spoil the movie, but between two of the main actors, and again, it's just sticking us there, and we're just waiting and just watching the scene play out. And these kind of films won't work for everybody, and someone that might have like a smaller attention span. I'm not meaning that a bad way too. Like, I kind of am, but like, someone that might have like a smaller attention span or might not enjoy kind of more like slow narrative movies might not like Materialist because of that. And maybe that would be a concern for someone, like if you're watching this and you kind of more like fast-paced, action-packed movies. This is not that, and that's not her directorial style. But to me, that's so interesting. And I love that that is her distinct style, is placing us in real life events, and it feels like we're actually watching real conversations between two real people. And I know it's like a buzzword, and I keep saying it, but it is true, and it is one of my main, if not main, positive of this movie is her directing, and I already talked about the writing as well. And that leads me right into my next positive, which is she. I was make sure I recorded for a second. She crafted together and brought together a trio of incredible actors. And obviously, I said that was kind of my hype going into this, and none of these three are like my top 10, top 5 actors of all time or anything like that. But they are all so talented and they're all so good in this movie. I think, and again, I've not seen a ton of Dakota Johnson's filmography, and I want to, and I have a couple of her movies on my list already before I even saw this. But um, I think this is definitely her career best performance. And I saw a couple people saying that out of like the early reviews, and I think it is very much true that this is her career best performance. Her character is very, you get frustrated with the character a lot, and it's very relatable in some points. It's very not relatable in other points, and she's very. It's a very interesting character because the way she acts around the two men in the story is again so relatable, but also so not relatable at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm portraying that well, but the bottom line is she just puts in a great performance, and the chemistry between her and the other two main actors, Evans and Pascal, is so solid and is there. There's always a worry when you pair together these very good looking and charismatic actors all in a story. Obviously that's all three of these people. There's always a worry that if you pair these actors together, maybe they just won't have good chemistry together. And it's nothing against their acting skills, and it's nothing against how good of an actor they are. It's just sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes actors don't work well together. I'm sure there's plenty of examples like that I could think of, but Materialist is not a case of that. All three of these actors, this main trio, all have great chemistry with each other, and the scenes between them are so enjoyable. And like I said, with Celine's incredible dialogue, they do a great job with it, and they elevate the dialogue even more. And already incredible dialogue, they elevate it with some of these scenes. And there's a really good scene in the middle. All the scenes are really good, but there's a really good scene. I think it was the middle, kind of Act One, towards the end of Act One, where Dakota Johnson's character and Pedro Pascal's character are kind of at a dinner table. And like I said, it's one of those times where Celine kind of just puts the camera down and slowly zooms in on them, and they're just having a conversation. And I'm always so impressed when I see stuff like this with actors, and it's one of the reasons the Adolescence TV show is getting so much buzz because it is so. I can't imagine really because I am not an actor. I never tried to be an actor, but I can't imagine how incredibly difficult it must be as an actor in these kind of scenes where they are literally acting for 5 minutes straight, 5, 10 minutes straight, unless it's tricky editing, which I don't think it is. They are acting for like 5, 10 minutes straight, and not only just remembering the lines, but like acting a certain way with their face. And I don't know if there's multiple takes involved here, but like it is so impressive. And it's a credit to all three of these actors that they were able to portray this in a believable way. And again, make it feel real. These scenes felt real, even though it is literally two or three actors, or even one of them, two or three actors acting in a scene for 5 to 10 minutes straight. And still just crushing and remembering all the dialogue and the facial expressions and the quick quips back and forth. Like it is just I'm so impressed with the main cast. And I'm not saying this is like groundbreaking. This is the only movie that's ever done one shots before. Like I'm not saying that at all. There's plenty of examples. And some of those movies are my favorite movies ever because I'm so impressed with the filmmaking and the acting. And I think this is a case of that, is that even if you didn't enjoy this movie, which I did, I think you have to respect the directing choice to do these one shots and also the talent of the actors to be able to act this out in a memorable way and actually a charismatic way and in a skilled way and an intelligent way. Like I'm just so impressed with all of them. And like I said, I liked all these three actors before watching this movie, but I gained even more respect for them after watching Materialists and after really, diving into this and thinking about some of these scenes and I'm gonna maybe give it a rewatch at some point if I have the time. But yeah, that was obviously the second positive here, is that those three are so, so, so good. And the way they play their part in the story about telling that narrative about love that I was talking about earlier is really interesting. I think they do a great job with it. And I'm gonna keep a lid on this. Kind of might work into one of my negatives. I'm gonna keep a lid on that for now. But yeah, I had such a good time watching these actors work together. They're such great scene partners, and any concerns that people might have had that they would not have good chemistry, which I don't think that was a concern because we saw from the trailers that one of the most kind of charismatic scenes is already in the trailers where Dakota and Pedro are sitting down at the table and Chris Evans comes in as the waiter. That's already in the trailer. I think people could tell going into this that they would have great chemistry together, and I can tell you that is 100% true. And if you were thinking about going to watch, if you don't really like movies like this, but you're thinking about going to watch this because you're a fan of any of those three actors, go see it because they're all so good in it, and each one of them is really good. Um, and it's interesting because again, I'm kind of tiptoeing around it here because I don't want to spoil this movie, but it's interesting because in the trailers they make it seem, and it kind of is the case that Pedro Pascal's character is kind of just a rich guy who's really attractive, and that's kind of what it feels like in the story and when we first meet his character. But Pedro and the writing of the character, they bring so much depth to him, and he doesn't feel like just this one-dimensional rich hot guy. The way they act it out throughout the story and kind of his final scenes is so interesting because you do I can't go into that too much, but it's just so well written, and it makes it so each of the characters, and specifically Pedro and his character, are not just one dimensional, and he's not just one dimensional, and he has many layers to him, and you feel certain sympathies for him at certain points, and you feel certain frustrations with him at some points, but the way they write him as a character is so well done, and Celine, again, it's written and directed by Celine Song, does such a good job with him as a character and with all the characters. But that was one of the things I specifically noted with Pedro is that he does such a good job acting it out, but additionally, just the writing is so good, and there's one scene, I think it's actually his final scene in the movie, with him and Dakota Johnson, and I can't get into it without spoiling, but it's just so interesting what they do with his character, and I think the spin they take on him is less predictable than you would have thought going into the movie. And yeah, I think that would probably do it for my positives because that's kind of the main part of the story. Um, it's just in general an interesting plot with her being a matchmaker and these two guys coming in, one from her past, one new. They're so different. They're on different ends of the spectrum, and seeing how she navigates that kind of world. And there's kind of another storyline in this that again I'm not going to get into because I guess technically a spoiler because there's another kind of storyline in this that wasn't in the trailer, and it's with one of Lucy, which is Dakota Johnson's character. It's with one of her clients, and it's something that is really probably going to hit home for a lot of people, especially women, kind of in this world of dating and online dating and matchmaking and all that. And it was something that I thought was not expected going into the story, and I really enjoyed how it was played out, and it was really devastating in points. And this doesn't really become much of an emotional watch, which I guess that could work into a negative as well. I didn't really think about that until now, but it isn't really getting to be a super emotional watch and didn't really pack the emotional punch for me. I don't know if that's whether I haven't fully experienced kind of the narrative too much. I don't know if it's because of that. I don't know if it's because I don't know if that's like again, I don't know if that's a drawback. I don't know if I should be complaining about that, but it didn't really pack the emotional punch for me. But there are certain scenes in here, especially with that one storyline, that will pack an emotional punch for people that can relate to the story and can relate to some of the experiences had with the main trio of actors, but also one of the side characters that is one of Lucy's clients, like I said. So yeah, that's my positives. My really only negative about this story is that it did feel very predictable. And I'm not saying that in a sense that like it still wasn't interesting and I still wasn't into the story, but if you had asked me to guess what would have happened before I walked into the movie theater, like when I was driving on the way to the movie theater, if you were to ask me what to guess what would have happened, I could have guessed it. And this is what I thought how the story would have gone, and where Dakota Johnson's character ends up, where Chris Evans' character ends up, where Pedro Pascal's character ends up. Like I could have guessed, I think, and I have no proof of this, but this is exactly how I would have expected a story like this to go. And I felt it was kind of, I don't know if cliche is the right word, but maybe it is. Like I just feel like it was very predictable. And again, it does do a good job of doing that interesting spin on romance movies and on rom-com. I don't know if this is a rom-com or like a drama, but it does do an interesting spin on that narrative. But at the same time, the way the events play out with our main three characters, I thought was very predictable. And again, going into this is how I thought the story would go and watching the trailer. Um, and although the trailer doesn't give a lot away, but maybe some people will feel the same way as me. That like going into it, I think I could have guessed exactly how the story would have played out in its events. And that's why I said this is a small thing, and this is not something that is really, excuse me, this is not something that's like deducing my score a lot, but it does reach a ceiling for my rating. And it's not about the rating at the end of the day. Obviously I'm just kind of talking about this and having fun talking about it. And I enjoyed watching this movie. I really enjoyed watching this movie. But it does maximize or I guess minimize that ceiling for my rating of the movie because I don't think it can get any higher than a 4 star because I didn't get the emotional punch and it was very predictable to me. So I think everything else about it is so good and it's so interesting and I was really compelled watching the story and there was no point where I was sitting there and I was like, oh, I can't wait for this to be over. Oh, I know what's gonna happen. Like there was no point in it. I wasn't like groaning when the storyline that I thought was gonna that when the storyline came to a head that I in a way that I thought it was going to, I wasn't like, oh my God, of course. Like I wasn't doing that, but it does reach a point where I can't rate it super high, 4.5 or a 5, because of that fact, the fact that it was predictable to me and I didn't get the emotional gun punch that I thought I might get out of this movie. And not every movie has to pack that punch, but to me, to get a movie to that higher scale, it sometimes does. And it sometimes, especially with romance movies, it kind of does have to reach that point. And again, this doesn't mean that I wasn't interested in the movie. And again, this is a really small complaint. It just reaches that point where like I can't rate it any higher than a 4 star. I don't know. Maybe on a rewatch, I would appreciate it more. And it's similar to if you read my Life of Chuck review, which I just did. And go read it if you haven't. It's on the website. I wrote a written review for it. It's like similar to that, where these are two movies that are you're watching these movies and you're interested the whole time. You're so interested, and they're both very slow paced. So, like I said, they won't work for everyone. But there's just it's hard. I'm trying to like figure out how to compare them to someone because I'm assuming people that are watching this haven't seen either of these movies. So maybe that's not the best comparison to make. And maybe I'm just plugging my review from 2 days ago. But yeah, the slow pacing of this didn't bother me like it did in my Life of Chuck review. The slow pacing of this didn't bother me because I think for the story and for the way for the narratives they're trying to tell and Celine is trying to tell with this story, I think it had to be this slow pace. And like I said, that is what makes this movie great is how real it feels. So I'm never gonna complain about this being slow paced if I'm saying that it was a positive that it felt real because of the writing and the direction. So that wasn't a problem to me. I think that will be a problem for some people, and I'm very curious to see what the general audience reaction to this is. I know it's doing well at the box office so far, and it has a good Rotten Tomatoes score. It didn't do well as well in Cinema Score. I think it got like a B minus, which is unexpected to me. But I'm very curious to see how audience respond to this and how what the long-term legacy of this movie is. Because like I said, it really did work for me and the themes really did hit for me and whether even if it wasn't in an emotional way and it being slow paced didn't bother me because I liked the choice and the directorial choice by Celine Song, but I do think that there might be some people who go into this and do have a problem with those things and rate it a lot lower, 3.5, 2.5 because of those things. Because again, I guess it's not really like a simple plot, but it is a very standard romance movie. And I think some of the themes that I identified are something that won't identify as much with the general audience. I'm not saying people can't relate to it, but I think the storyline might not be as interesting to some people that are more of a non-movie fan or not like a Celine Song or an A24 fan or a fan of these actors. Like that might alienate certain people. And like I said, I don't know that for sure. That's kind of just my guess, but that's why I'm so interested to see like in the next week or two to kind of see like the general consensus on Twitter and on Letterboxd and I know it's getting good reviews, but a lot of those people are movie fans, and I think that and that's not to detest anyone from seeing this. Like anyone who asks me, I would recommend whether they're not a romance fan or not a fan of these actors or whatever. Like I would recommend this movie to you no matter what. If anyone came up to me and said, "Should I watch Materialists?" I would say yes because it was very enjoyable, and I think the majority of people will enjoy this movie. And I like the fact that it leaves a lot of dialogue for it and you leave the movie what I mean is you leave the movie theater and there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot to think about and it brings a lot of interesting things to your head and I watched this with my mom and we were talking about kind of it on the whole car ride back. I'm sure we will more today. Because it does leave you with a lot and it leaves you with a lot to think about, and I like that. And I think that even if someone doesn't enjoy this movie as much, I hope that they can go in and see that and see that there is a lot to talk about. And maybe in talking about it more, maybe you saw the movie and you didn't like it as much, but you're watching this and I'm hopefully convincing you about the positives of this movie. And um I hope that's the case. And I hope the long-term legacy of this is in a similar way to past lives. too early to tell if this will get awards buzz. I don't think any of the actors will because they kind of have equal screen time in a certain way, and I don't think Dakota Johnson does enough to get like a lead actress consideration, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. And I don't think Chris Evans or Pedro do enough to get that supporting actor um, love, at least to the Oscars, maybe to the other smaller award shows. But I hope that it does get the recognition that Past Lives got in terms of Best Picture. I don't know if it'll be my top 10 at the end of the year. Like, I don't know. But right now, I think I put it like, I think it was like number six on my 2025 list out of like 40 or 41 movies. So it is really up there for me this year. Although this year hasn't been totally amazing so far, there's only been like a handful of really good movies. But, and the summer's heating up now, so that should change. But I do hope that Celine Song gets recognition, and again, the movie maybe gets recognition for Best Picture because I think it deserves it for the story that it tells and the themes that it tries to portray and the interesting way that it executes those themes. And again, although I didn't really enjoy the predictability. That's what I'm trying to say. I didn't really enjoy the predictability of the movie. I still think the way they execute it is interesting, and the way they execute that predictability and that predictive narrative. That's just a tongue twister. That's what I was trying to say. That predictable narrative, I think the way they execute it is interesting. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm trying to make it make sense. So yeah, I hope it does get awards recognition. And I was saying earlier that I think that I enjoy Past Lives a little bit more than this, but they are very similar, and not in terms of like the plot or anything, but because it is the same director and is her follow-up after Past Lives. I think this is her first movie since Past Lives. It is very similar in that sense in terms of like the directing style and the writing and like the endings and stuff like that and kind of what it's trying to say. It is similar in that sense, and it's kind of both of them are like a narrative on dating and kind of long lost people and if you've seen Past Lives and this movie, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say. I think this was a very enjoyable watch, and although I have like that one nitpick about the predictability of it, that's like a small problem. And I still did really enjoy this. It is one of the best of 2025 so far. Now that I'm saying that, I'm going to go and look real quick what it actually just so I can remember what it is on my 2025 list. So bear with me, lists. I'm going. It's not loading. Okay, it's not loading. So I'll just. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So I've seen 42 new 2025 movies, so movies that have been released in 2025 this year so far, and it is number five for me right now. So I did put it above Life of Chuck. I thought that I put it below, but I could go back and forth in those. Those are both great movies. But yeah, I put it at number five on my 2025 list right now, only behind Sinners, Mission Impossible, Thunderbolts, and Predator Killer of Killers, which I should have wrote it before, but I didn't. But anyway, it's right above Life of Chuck, Companion, Drop, Ballerina, Warfare. That rounds up my top 10. Mickey 17 is just missing out on that at number 11. But yeah, anyway, I totally recommend you go see this movie. It is really good. It's very interesting, and it's just an enjoyable movie to watch for the summer. And I think it's going to be a very popular movie with a certain crowd and definitely with movie fans. I think if you are a movie fan, you should definitely go and see this if you haven't planned to already. And yeah, I think that's it. Shout out Celine Song, shout out Dakota Johnson, shout out Chris Evans, shout out Pedro Pascal. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I will be back next week with a review, maybe. What's coming out next week? I'm gonna check that right now. Is there anything coming back next week that I will be able to review? 28 years later is coming out next weekend. So yeah, if I get to that Friday or Saturday or Thursday even, that'll be my next video is a review of that. So hopefully I do get to that and hopefully it is good enough or bad enough for me to write a review and I have enough to say about it. Because I did not like 28 days later or 28 weeks later. So I'm hoping this one changes that. I think a lot of my problems with that will not be prevalent in this new installment. But anyway, I'll be back next Friday or Saturday, whatever the timing works out with whatever movie I see or whatever news I decide to talk about. Unless there's breaking news in the next week, then obviously I'll turn on the camera and talk about that. But again, thank you so much for listening. Go see Materialists, and yeah, see ya.